Well, they have a legal arm. They have a legal arm of the Antifa, I guess, the National Lawyers Guild. So also this one comes from Andy. He says that the National Lawyers Guild, the NLG, is the main anarchist, communist, legal organization that provides pro bono help to Antifa criminal suspects. Their attorneys and volunteers in green hats do cop watching as well, protests and riots. National Lawyers Guild. So here we've got a statement from one of the executive director of the National Lawyers Guild. So this is somebody who, is presumably somebody with a plan, a platform, with some ideas on how to fix this entire situation. What does this person say about what they want? Are we going to get any concrete information about it? Let's see. So here we've got NLG anti-racism co-chair, third-year law student. She spends her free time working with local anti-racist, anti-fascist groups to fight white supremacy at the university and in her community. She's an anti-racism trainer and works for the ACLU, Knowing Your Rights and Legal Observer Training. She's also a sister, so on and so forth, jailhouse lawyer, legal worker. It's a small collective, so they're basically, providing pro bono representation for people who get in trouble for protesting. So they're representing Antifa or BLM or any of these other groups who are out there protesting. They're going to come to their aid. For what purpose? I don't know what it means. What is her free time working with local anti-racist and anti-fascist groups to fight white supremacy? What the hell is that? I have no idea what that means. And so, honestly, at this point, it's been 2 months. At the beginning of the protest, at the beginning of the riots, this was something that I was comfortable supporting because I wanted to give it time to develop and mature into something that could really be a movement. And I know that things take time to develop. I understand that not every organic demonstration is going to sort of coalesce into a framework that is going to have a cohesive plan. I get that. But it's been now 62 days. And it's also been something where this has had enough time to work its way up the chain of command. The Democratic House of Representatives, the representatives on the Senate, on the House Judiciary Committee, the people who were explaining this stuff to Bill Barr, the Republicans are just as culpable. They had no interest in tackling any of these issues. They parried them all away, and the whole thing has just been a joke. So at this point in time, I can no longer support these protests that are sort of pseudo peaceful, pseudo violence. Yeah, I just can't do it. The analogy again that I use is the police, right? If let's look at any one of the officers who I've covered on this show ad nauseum. Let's pick any one of them. The cops who killed Rayshard Brooks, the cops who killed Breonna Taylor, the cops who killed George Floyd, the cops who killed Ahmaud Arbery, all of them, and many, many more. Those are just some of the recent ones. They were mostly peaceful, right? Mostly peaceful. Most of their lives were peaceful. Every day they went home after work. Every day they spent time with their families and their kids. They did one thing bad, and now they're murderers, and now they need to be held accountable for it. So for this idea that these protests are just simply mostly peaceful, and therefore we have to accept and acquiesce to all of the other nonsense that they're doing, like burning buildings down, beating people up, like state senators, beating them up to the point where they're in the hospital getting surgery, burning buildings down, killing people, that is not okay. You are now commingling your efforts with an entity that is really setting back the criminal justice reform movement. And that's why I get so irritated about this entire thing. It's ruining all the progress that we're making. When George Floyd had some psycho lunatic cop have his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the country was unified on this thing. Everybody wanted to see some changes. Everybody was talking about things like qualified immunity and ending police unions and justice reform and a national Brady list and all of those things. That has just evaporated. We were unified. We all saw that this was a very disgusting thing that happened. And finally, for the first time in the 7 years that I've been practicing, we started to see a national conversation on criminal justice reform. We were unified. Man, all of the boats were rowing in the same direction. And now what has happened? The defund the police movement is probably the dumbest branding decision I've ever heard ever We just want to defund all of the police. Do you think that everyday middle Americans are going to be on board with that idea? Not at all. But ending qualified immunity? Yeah, maybe. That's probably a pretty good one. Some of the other things are probably pretty good ones, and we could have conversations about that. But we can't do it now because the media and the stuff that we're seeing, and because the protesters have gotten out of hand to the point where they're ruining the cause. They are burning buildings down and they're causing chaos. And the right is going to pick up on that all day long. The people who I've kind of beaten up on the show about always, being bootlickers to law enforcement and the police, and anything that the cops do is heroic, and they're just out there sacrificing themselves for our well-being all of the time. Their positions are being validated. They're looking at the news. They're looking at the same clips. They're looking at what is going on around the world, and they are disgusted by it, as am I. I'm as pro-free speech, as anti-government as anybody I know. But what we're seeing on the streets is not okay. It's not okay to destroy other people's property and burn things down and then run away and claim that you're just exercising your freedom of speech. That is not what we're talking about for freedom of speech or for freedom of association. So if these groups are commingling with these other violent groups, then they are just as bad as the good cops who say nothing when bad cops commit heinous offenses. They're just as bad. I have to hold that same standard of accountability across the board because it's the right thing to do. We want to see this move forward. And anytime that one of these movements or one of these politicians or any one of these judges or prosecutors is out there doing something that's going to hurt the criminal justice reform movement, I have to say something about it. And so for a long time, for 60-something days, I have been deferring my position on the protest because I wanted to give it time to coalesce, to come up with a plan, to come up with a strategy that's going to move the ball forward. And that just hasn't happened. Every day, in fact, it's getting worse. I'm looking at these NLG.org. I'm looking at the leaders of this movement, and the only thing I'm seeing or reading about is down with the system, Antifa, anti-fascist, white supremacy, white racism, and all of these things. And we have no ability to win the hearts and minds or to really implement any meaningful change. Defund the police is a failed idea. It will never happen in this country. It is a pipe dream, as it should be. It's not even a good idea. We're seeing it around the country. I don't have the stats right now, but murders are up. Crime is up across the board. It looks like a disaster out there where they're making some of these changes. And so the pendulum is going to swing the other way. I talk about that also here a lot. We are seeing, right after George Floyd died, we saw the whole country coalesce and say that we want to see some meaningful change. The pendulum is swinging back the other direction, everybody. And it is a damn shame. It's really heartbreaking to see it because we were in unison and we were moving forward. And now, from what I'm seeing, I just can't support it anymore. So, like many others, it's time to disavow what we're seeing. The violent protesters or even the peaceful protesters that are commingling with the violent protesters, it's hard to tell the difference. Got to disavow it. You got to disavow it because it's now hurting our movement. And I can't be in alignment with something that's doing that. We got to keep our eye on the bigger picture, on the bigger ball here. We want actual, meaningful, substantive change, substantive reform. I get that people are pissed off. I'm as pissed off as anybody, but that doesn't mean you can go out there and burn things down and injure people and beat people. It's not acceptable. And you're welcome to do it, but the government's welcome to respond. You're welcome to go out there and throw stuff at federal buildings. The government's free to tear gas you. It's part of the game. If you want to play that game, you're entitled to do it, but it's not something that I can support because it is undermining everything that we're doing, everything that we're working for. All of the great people across all of the different organizations who feel this sort of need to support the protesters because it's like, oh, that's my team. That's my team. I care about those people. I care about those issues. I'm also pissed off about this stuff. But my team is really screwing it up. Really, really failing on basically every level. And I got to say something about it. I have to say we got to correct our course on this thing because the reaction from the rest of America when they see this and they see, maybe we'll see some proposals at some point. I still have not seen any, but if we do, the response is going to be so visceral. People are going to be so angry about it that they're just not going, anything that you propose at this point, people are basically drawing lines in the sand. If it has anything to do with criminal justice reform, people are now associating what they're seeing in Portland, what they're seeing in Chaz and Chop, what they're seeing in Minneapolis, what they're seeing in Oregon. They're associating that with criminal justice reform. Defund the police and, get rid of federal law enforcement. Let us burn down whatever we want. That is not a winning argument. It is not winning branding. It is not winning any hearts and minds. And we need those people to vote and do things. And I mean, most of these people are very anti-Trump. Have you seen the polls recently? This activity is moving Trump's poll numbers up. There was an article today on hotair.com from one of my favorite bloggers. His name's Allah Pundit. He's saying that in the battleground states, the numbers are tightening. Trump's law and order message is the one that is catching steam because the pendulum is swinging back the other way. People are pissed about it, and I don't blame them for it.